Okay, it's Friday. It's time for Happy Hour, and joining me this evening is RT correspondent Lauren Lister and Alex Seitzwald, reporter and blogger for thinkprogress.org. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Seeing you again. Okay, the Palin movie trailer is out. I know it's the moment that everyone's been waiting for, so take a look.
She blew the whistle on her own party.
She took it on because she knew it needed to be done.
I was actually working against Sarah Palin. I didn't feel she was strong enough. I didn't feel she had the gravitas.
Sarah had courage to try.
And she's not afraid.
A 42-year-old Wasilla warrior unseating a 26-year political veteran.
And then she quit. You tell me that she's not running for something. That thing looks like a PSA with the people standing just with the white background, talking about all of her achievements and everything.
Debuted in Iowa with her there.
Coincidentally.
Very coincidental, I'm sure.
Are you going to go see it? Are you going to buy a ticket?
You know, I'm just going to watch the trailer over and over because the most dramatic part that we didn't get to see there is the beginning, which is the most dramatic music I have ever heard with all of her accolades. Mother, wife, and just like the most dramatic music I've ever heard.
Well, my favorite thing about this is how can you name a movie about somebody who lost the 2008 election, The Undefeated?
I know.
I mean, she was defeated.
There's proof. She was
proof.
defeated.
We saw it. Also, in the end there's a lengthy scene where they burn money and flush it down the toilet and tear it up, which is actually illegal. I always heard that, but I looked it up today, and it's true.
So they're breaking some laws on camera. But the thing about Sarah Palin is nothing she does makes sense, so I guess making a movie called The Undefeated about somebody that lost in their world makes sense. Now let's move on to our next story. Of course, this is one of those scandals that the whole world has been watching, and there's been a lot of critique around this perp walk that's now become so famous. Take a look.
IMF boss Dominique Strauss-Kahn has arrived at court in New York to face charges including attempted rape. Hours earlier, the man who was widely tipped to be France's next president was seen in public for the first time since his arrest on Saturday. Handcuffed and looking drained, Strauss-Kahn is set to plead not guilty to claims he sexually attacked and unlawfully imprisoned a hotel maid.
All right, so DSK had to deal with the perp walk, with being paraded around in front of everybody, and now, of course, the entire case is falling apart. Now it turns out that the accuser may have been, this whole thing was a scam, it was all for money. But one thing that the U.S. media hasn't done, compared to the European media, is that they haven't mentioned her name out of respect for her. Do you think that that's the right thing to do?
I do. I agree with it. I just do. I don't care whether the case against her or against him falls apart as a result of her credibility. I think that protecting the possible victims of sexual assault and rape is something really important that most of the press does.
But then
too.
if the case does fall apart, right, and let's say that she was not a victim, then is she going to be fair game for everyone to try and dig up every person that she was ever related to or lived next to and try to get dirt on her?
I think that's a good question. I think it's tricky because just because if the case falls apart doesn't mean she wasn't a rape victim. It might fall apart for other reasons, which is what people have hinted to in this case, attorneys in the case.
Yeah, I think it's probably generally a good idea to do it. I mean, it is an awkward situation now because with the internet, you can Google it and find literally hundreds of websites.
Well, like I said, because in Europe or around the rest of the world, everybody is already printing the name.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that there's this, ethics.
But if everybody jumps off a bridge, that doesn't make it okay for you to jump off a bridge, to use a total cliche.
I will say, though, it's amazing that we all went from immediately, oh, yes, terrible guy, awful guy, and now it's like, oh, I kind of feel bad for jumping to judgment on him.
And that's a separate issue, and I think that is an issue, but I do think it's separate from releasing the victim's name.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I agree with the press in this case, but I always find it kind of odd when they choose to abide by certain ethics and then when they choose to just throw them out the window and be hypocrites. Here's another one. These are kind of downers. So
sorry.
Here's another one that I've been talking
about
nonstop is this Casey Anthony trial that I can't believe how much coverage there's been. But because there's been so much coverage, because people like Nancy Grace whipped everyone into this crazy frenzy, now there's some legislation that might be pending because of it, or at least there's a petition. Take a look.
The public emotion still running extremely high following her acquittal on murder charges. A handful of states are now considering new legislation called Kaylee's Law.
So this creates felony charges, actually, if a parent or caretaker does not disclose to law enforcement a missing or deceased child.
Now,
also creates an
All right, I'm sorry. I will tell you why I think this is a bad idea. Not because I don't think that it's good to try to protect children, but if anybody out there is actually planning on doing something bad to their kid, actually planning on killing them, the threat of a felony for not reporting it right away is not going to scare them off. It's not going to change their mind. Meanwhile, you might have somebody else that gets somehow caught in like the bureaucracy of all this if somebody reports someone missing and they weren't really missing, and then they have a felony slapped on them.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the law, I just don't want to hear about Casey Anthony's case anymore. So if they're going to pass these laws, fine, pass them, get them done, which unfortunately in our country doesn't happen very quickly. But I hope that it will, because I just want this case out of the media. It has been
And you want
so
a bunch of people to have felonies that maybe don't need them.
If it means that Casey Anthony will be out of the news, fine.
Yeah, it seems a little draconian, but I just can't help but think that Nancy Grace is somehow behind all of this.
Oh, I'm sure she started this whole
whispering in the
petition.
ears. Yeah, I mean, she's going to personally lobby every state legislature to get this thing passed. I mean, and I'm terrified of her, so, whatever she wants.
Her ratings could depend on it. She's seen a huge boost because of the Casey Anthony coverage.
HLN saw their best ratings ever of all time because of all this mumbo jumbo.
She's been in the 1 or 2 spot.
Let's move on to something else that is really annoying and that everybody wishes would go away, which is planking. I think we have a few images for you if you haven't heard of planking yet. It's where people just lay around with their heads down.
Okay, that had to be photoshopped. He was not planking on a cone.
And so, whatever, it's been going on for a while, but now Exhibit came out today and he tweeted that planking is basically racist. He said planking was a way to transport slaves on ships during the slave trade. It's not funny. Educate yourselves. Don't get it twisted. I care less where your dumbasses lay face down and take pictures of it. I'm just telling you where it came from. But I don't think that's actually what it's about, because I think that people have been doing that in England like it's just been kind of a joke.
Yeah,
But Gawker said if that gets planking to go away, then go for it.
And I completely agree with that. I think this planking thing is ridiculous. People have died. Sorry, planking isn't worth dying for.
Yeah, 2 people fell off a balcony or something like that. But I mean, I think, lying down on the ground, I don't really see how that comes from one particular place over any other particular place. This newest planking trend is started by a radio, host trying to promote something. So I don't know.
They've been doing it fun in Australia.
Exhibit needs to
and
calm
some
down a
people are
little
being
bit.
stupid about it by doing it on a balcony and then dying.
And as Gawker points out, planking is also a Pilates position. So, choose your own adventure with where it comes from.
All right, I have to wrap it up, you guys, but thanks for joining me. Thanks for tuning in.